8.9 are perfect squares. Here, learning target is I can factor perfect square trinomials, and I can solve equations involving perfect squares. Now, what are perfect squares? They are expressions that look like this, where we have a squared plus 2 times a times b plus b squared. And if we notice that this is how the equation looks, we can go ahead and rewrite it as two factors: the sum of a times b times the sum of a times b. And we can use the zero product property to solve for any variables, right? Because a plus b squared is the same as a plus b times a plus b. We also have another perfect square pattern. It's a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. That equals a minus b, or the difference of a and b squared. So let's go ahead and identify and factor perfect square trinomials. So here we're going to determine if the trinomial is a perfect square, and if so, we'll factor it. And so how do we determine if this trinomial is a perfect square? Well, we'll look at the first term, and it is a perfect square, right? 9 has a square root of 3, and y squared has a square root of y, so 3y squared would be 9y squared. 16 is also a perfect square. It's 4 times 4. Right? And now what we want to do is take a look at the inside and determine whether it is equal to 2 times a times b. Alright, so maybe I can write this all out. It might be easier. So the first thing we want to do is find a. So a squared, right, would be the first term. A squared is equal to 9y squared. And now to determine what a is, we're going to take the square root of both sides, and we'll get a is equal to 3y. We're going to do the same thing with 16. So we get b squared is equal to 16, and then to find b, we'll take the square root of both sides, and we'll get b is equal to 4. Okay, so a and b are perfect squares, right? And now we want to take a look at the center term, and the center term is 2 times a times b. Well, let's see if that's the case. 2 times 3 is 6, times y is 6y. 6y times 4 is 24y. So yes, the center term, or the middle term, is equal to 2 times a times b. Okay. So this here is a perfect square, and now which one is it? Is it a plus b squared, or is it a minus b squared? And looking at it, we could see that it is the sum of a and b squared. Right. So we can go ahead and say equals. We'll put a is 3y, plus b is 4 squared, and that is our answer. So I'm going to come here and say 3y plus 4 squared. All right. So now we're looking at the second one here, the second trinomial, and we are checking if it is a perfect square. If the first term is a perfect square, and if the last term is a perfect square. So we'll say a squared is equal to 2a squared. To find a, we're going to take the square root of both sides, and we'll get a is equal to. Now we could pull out an a, but the square root of 2 is not a whole number. Right? You can punch it in your calculator. It's like 1 point something something something, 1.2 something something. So this is not a perfect square. Okay. So then I'm going to put here not a perfect square. As our answer. Okay. Yeah, and that's about it, right? So the steps are that you check the first term to see if it's a perfect square. And then you check the third term to check if it's a perfect square. And then lastly, when you get the two, you can check if the center term, the second term, is a times b times 2. And if it is, then we have a perfect square, and it fits this pattern, and we can factor it into the sum of a and b squared, or the difference of a and b squared.